isotope. It has a different number of neutrons than normal helium, but it can be made here on Earth. And from what I understand, I'm just going to give I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment with you, Duncan. Right now, fusion is not. We've found no way to make that work as a power source. People, Lord knows, have been trying. And if it's not a power source, and given the fact that we could create helium-3 on Earth, I wonder if the numbers would still add up, given how expensive it is to the moon. Certainly the water would change everything, right? If there's ice.
No, you're absolutely right, and you're making a very valid point, and I think I think it's echoing the point that I'm making. What's really going to get people back to the moon is obviously exploration. I think that's something that's inbuilt in humanity. But what really seems to drive things is economics. And it's interesting because I think shortly we'll see perhaps the first fare-paying passengers who take a suborbital trip into space and make a half-hour journey into orbit, and that will just change the way that we view space. No longer is it purely for exploration, but also it crosses a boundary. It suddenly becomes something. Okay, it's still going to be incredibly expensive to buy one of those tickets, but you can buy a ticket, and it's not as if it hasn't happened already. I mean, we've had space tourists, people who have actually paid to travel into orbit. And I just think it seems logical to me. I don't know when, and I don't know quite what will sort of precipitate it, but I can't see why it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I was thinking while you were talking that the way even space science and the research arena is done is changing. So there's going to be more links with industry and more private companies being used to get humans into space now. And so if the technology is being developed for that purpose, then there surely will be more spin-offs in the space tourism area.
I wonder, Lucy, if that's not the catalyst. That's what, as we move from as it moves into the private sector, you may well find that before we know it, there's a whole plethora of private space industries doing things on a small scale, but still doing things, that both from a research point of view, but also from perhaps something more exciting. Well, I say exciting, but more sort of prevalent to people who want to travel into space.
And I wonder, since we're watching the moon now, I'm Bob Berman here with our guests Lucy Green and Duncan Kopp. As we're watching the partial phases, the moon is going in reverse now. The red color is disappearing. We're back to sunlight ever growing on the eastern or leftmost part of the moon as we watch the outline of Earth's shadow. That's what we're seeing, our own planet shadow, so that people on the eastern part of Earth, if they could stretch their hands up, people who are experiencing sunset right now, if they could reach up in towards the sky, you could see their shadow right on the edge of the moon on the left side there, waving to you on the left side of the moon. If only they had giant hands like I do. We're talking about going possibly to the moon. I wonder if we ever set up residences on the moon, whether it would be the neighborhoods. It would depend upon where on the moon. For example, the poles, as Duncan just pointed out, is places where there'd be ice and hence water. That would obviously be more valuable properties and suffer, unfortunately, higher taxes. Places along the limb of the moon would also be places where the Earth, as seen from the moon, would be hovering just above the horizon. That would be desirable as well. The far side of the moon would have no Earth in the sky. That's a minus. Those would obviously be the poorer homes. That would be the tract housing. That would be the ghettos on the moon. No Earth in the sky. Places right in the center of the moon, the Earth would always be straight up. See, from the moon, although the sun crosses the sky in a 2-week period, the Earth is always in the same spot, never deviates. So once you have bought your property, signed the lease, wherever the Earth is in the sky, That's where it's always going to be, sort of the equivalent of Polaris, the North Star for us here on Earth, where from your home, wherever the North Star is, it's always going to be in that same spot. So different strata, different property values, depending upon where on the moon you want to live. I think that's probable for the future.
So where would Bob? Where would the best place be for astronomy if you?
Well, they say the best place might be on the far end because then you wouldn't get any interference from Earth. But then again, you'd be out of touch with Earth-based telescopes. I think any part of the Earth, the moon would be good. Of course, you'd want to be near the poles because you want that yummy ice and water. You definitely want water. You get thirsty otherwise. And I think it was figured out that that water cost $10,000 a gallon to haul to the moon for the Apollo astronauts. So you can't have that. We're counting on there being copious ice in those dark, never see the sun craters, those vampire layers that exist on the south and the north side of the moon. I want to ask both of you, for Scrabble, do either of you memorize the two-letter words?
We always, well, I don't know if this is cheating, but we always look at the sheet, I'm afraid.
Oh, no. Got to memorize those two-letter words, A-A, A-E, A-I. That's the important thing. Let's talk about future eclipses in this kind of desultory rambling here at SLU. One or two thank yous, though. I want to thank Google for their support of this. I want to thank, of course, the new movie Transformers coming up. The event is sponsored by Transformers Dark of the Moon, the new Michael Bay film, in cinemas from June 29th. See it in 3D. And most of all, I want to thank SLOOH, S-L-O-O-H, SLOOH.com. You're probably seeing this at eclipse.slooh.com, but just go on SLOOH.com or hit that button, become a member, and you'll be seeing live astronomy. Not just seeing, you'll be controlling it. You'll be making the telescopes turn to wherever you want. You can do serious astronomy with that. Take your pictures of it, see the Crab Nebula, the Whirlpool Galaxy, watch Jupiter spin. Unbelievable. Definitely do that as well. I also want to thank, not that they're leaving right now, but I want to thank Lucy Green for taking the trouble to join us from London. I want to thank Duncan Kopp. I'm not going to plug any of his things. We've been plugging his stuff all show long, but definitely look Google him, and you'll see some of the things he's doing. Me, Bob Berman, I guess the only thing I'd be plugging is my new book, The Sun's Heartbeat, coming out next month from Little Brown, or BobBermanTours.com. It's a way to see the Northern Lights next March, or the total eclipse of the sun in Alaska next November. BobBermanTours.com. And that, I promise, is the last of the plugs. Now all that shameless stuff is over, and we'll talk a little bit more about the moon and about coming eclipses as well. If you like this, we're going to have another lunar eclipse this December 10th. That time the moon will not go centrally into Earth's shadow, and those in North America, in Canada and the United States, will be able to see it. There's actually not a lot of total eclipses between now and, let's say, 2021. In the next 10 years, after this, there are none next year. None. There are none in 2013. None. In 2014, there will be 2 total eclipses. In 2015, there will be 2 total eclipses, visible in various parts of the world. Then none in 2016, none in 2017. In 2018, there will be 2. 2019, there'll be 1, and none in 2020. So there's not a lot, really. What is that? 2, 4, 6, 7 in the next 10 years, and only half of those or so will be visible wherever you are. And wherever you happen to be located, try for that wonderful transit of Venus that's coming up next year, when the planet Venus is going to cross the face of the sun. Now, that only happens on average twice a century. The events come in pairs, 8 years apart. And so if you miss this one, you're going to have to wait for the 22nd century to see Venus across the face of the sun. So that's a major thing. I'd say in terms of the greatest celestial events, we're looking at a live lunar eclipse now, of course. The greatest celestial events, without having a big fancy telescope, are probably a total eclipse of the sun. Everyone who's seen them, and both of these guys that we have on the phone, Lucy here, who saw a great one, and Duncan, who says he saw it from England through
You don't believe me, do you?
If so, he was the only one who saw that eclipse on August 11th of 1999. You don't look for eclipses from England. You just don't do it. Sorry. But he saw it a little bit, but I urge everyone to get to a total eclipse of the sun. I'm going to give you an idea of how spectacular that is. During maybe 8 years ago, during one of our Northern Lights tours up in Alaska, Central Alaska, we had about 35 people in the last one. I did that for 3 years. And we had just come indoors after seeing the most amazing all-sky, swirling, brilliant auroras. This is the best I'd ever seen. We always hold those in March, by the way, because you definitely want a big chunk of night. People go to Alaska in June, July, August and take a cruise, and then they come back and they say, I didn't see any northern lights. Well, of course you didn't. There was no night, was there? So March is a good month because Earth is sideways to the sun. The worst of the Alaskan winter is over. It's just a perfect month. That's when we always do our tours to see them. People just come in, and I asked everybody, because I figured these people are wealthy enough to do, a lot of them were Japanese, and they were wealthy enough to be the kind of people that went on nature tours. So I said, how many of you have seen a total eclipse of the sun, have gone on a pilgrimage to see one? And sure enough, 25 of the people raised their hand. And I said, then allow me to ask you a question. Which did you find more spectacular? The aurora that you just saw a few minutes ago, or the total eclipse of the sun? And wouldn't you know that all but one picked